Hey everyone, Dave here at Blueberries Games again with another $20 budget deck. Today's deck is Red Green Tribal Hungry Like the Wolf. It is a Tribal Wolf deck. Uh, I actually just thought of another name for it, but it's already labeled, so I'm just going to stick with it. We'll go ahead and take a look at it though. Most of you are probably going to be too young to know that that actually is the name of a song, I believe. Very old song, even older than me. Alright, so let's start off with our one drop. Our one drop is very basic. It's a one that casts 1/1. However, it has Undying. Undying just means that if it does die, it comes back onto the battlefield. You put a +1/+1 counter on it. You could only do that if it didn't have the +1/+1 counter on already. So essentially, it's a one that casts 1/1 that turns into a 2/2 later. I got a playset of those because that's important. These guys just, it's value. It's a one that casts 1/1 that comes back as a 2/2. You don't have to cast it, it just comes back. So I got a playset of those in there for that. Alright, the next one is Hinterland Lager. Boy, that must be a beastly of a woman. It is it is a 2 to cast 2/1 that at the beginning of each upkeep, and a lot of these are going to do this because these are werewolves. And the werewolves, this is the theme for the werewolves, is that they get bigger, they transform. So at the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast the last turn, transform it. Hinterland Lager turns from a 2/1 into a trampling 4/2. However, the downfall for most of the werewolves, not all, but most of them, is that at the beginning of each upkeep, if any player played 2 or more spells, transform it back into the human. So it was a neat little thing. I remember when this first came out in Innistrad, I was not a fan of the transform. I was at the pre-release and I was watching everybody flip their cards, and I was like, well, then they got to take them out of the sleeves and they got to turn it over, and I wasn't a fan of it. However, when I started playing a deck like this on Magic Duels on the Xbox, I came to appreciate that, they're for a cheaper cost. They start off small, but they get bigger. So anyway, there's 2 of these in there. The next one is just a regular wolf. It's a 2 to cast 2/1 that has, a semi-evasion so it can get through, and that's creatures with power less than it cannot block it. At its current state, which is a 2/1, that means that basically anything with 1 power can't block it. If it gets bigger for some reason, and it will, the higher the power, the less the creatures that can block it. So I went with 2 of those. The next one is a 3 to cast 2/2 Rotwolf. Now, this one's a little different. It's not in here for the Infect. The Infect is great. Infect basically just means that it deals damage and poison counters, and in the form of -1/-1 counters for creatures. It does not deal actual damage. That isn't the point of this for this deck. The point of it was that whenever a creature dealt damage by a Rotwolf this turn is put into a graveyard or basically dies, you may draw a card. That was the central reason for this card. It was to help it because green does not draw cards very well. And there's even a foreign version in here. Alright, the next card is Lone Wolf. It is a 3 to cast 2/2 that says that it may deal its combat damage to the defending player as though it weren't blocked. Even if it's blocked, no matter what, it gets its damage through. That is for effects later that if it grows bigger, it hits harder. And no matter what, its damage goes through. Alright, the next one is Solitary Hunter. It's a 4 to cast 3/4 that has the Werewolf Transform ability that whenever, during each upkeep, remember guys, on each upkeep, that means that if your opponent didn't play anything, on your turn it flips. So keep that in mind when you're playing. But if no cards were, or no spells were cast, transform him, he goes from a 3/4 to a 5/6. That's a pretty big body there. So, like I said, just keep in mind that this ability as well also means each upkeep. So, if your opponent casts 2 spells, you transform back again. So, just keep those in mind. I got 2 of those in there. Alright, next card is Cult of the Waxing Moon. It's a 5 to cast 5/4, so it has a pretty big body already. Whenever a permanent you control transforms into a non-human creature, you put a 2/2 green wolf token onto the battlefield. Basically, with the new wording, it's create a 2/2 wolf token, but whatever. So, For those of you who may be confused by that, he is a human warrior werewolf. If he flips into the werewolf form, that is a non-human creature. So, if he flips her, and remember, it's any of them. So, if you have 3 or 4 out and they turn over or transform, you don't just get one token. You get a token for each one that turns or flips. Keep that in mind because that could be very important in some of your games. So there's 2 of them in there. Alright. For the red 1-drop, Reckless Waif. So, if you pay attention at all to Pauper, if you pay attention at all to Modern a couple years ago, you would know that this card is the twin to one of the most badass cards ever. He is a 1 to cast, 1/1, that at the beginning of each upkeep, if those spells are cast, transform into a 3/2. First turn. So, your opponent, you play this on your first turn, your opponent says draw, go, and this is out. You have a 3/2 to attack with on the first turn that you get to attack. So, that's pretty important. I can't stress to you enough how quick that can go and how fast that can end the game. So I've got 2 of those in there. My hope is that you draw a mountain and that on your first turn, and then you hope your opponent doesn't have a 1-drop if you are on the go, and you've got a 3/2 right off the bat. So, next is Kessig Forgemaster. 2 to cast, 2/1. Now, his ability is whenever he has 2 abilities. Whenever he blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, it deals 1 damage to that creature. So, if it has the 1 toughness, it doesn't get to deal its damage to him on both sides. It doesn't matter what it is. He gets that 1 damage off. On the flip side, if it has a 3 toughness and it's blocking or he blocks it, he can still kill that as well because he may have only 2 power, but he deals that extra damage. So, now, he's also a werewolf, so he has the werewolf transform ability. And he transforms into the Flameheart Werewolf, which is a 3/2, that whenever he blocks or becomes blocked, he now deals 2 damage to that creature. So, he gets bigger, his ability gets bigger, so him transforming is a good thing. Got 2 of those in there. Now, this guy's a little different than the other werewolves. This is Smoldering Werewolf. He's a 4 to cast, 3/2. When he enters the battlefield, he deals 1 damage to up to 2 targets. Each of up to 2 targets, meaning that he deals, if there are 2 targets, 1 to each. If it doesn't say may, actually. I just thought about that. When he enters the battlefield, he has to deal 1 damage to up to 2 target creatures. So, if your opponent only has 1 creature in play, then you have to deal 1 damage to your own creature. But it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Anyway, so what's different about him is that he doesn't have the normal werewolf transform. He has one where you have to pay for the transform. And when you get there, he transforms into an Eldrazi werewolf called Erupting Dreadwolf. Now, he turns into a 6/4 that when he attacks, he deals 2 damage to... I believe that this was changed with the new rulings to anything that includes Planeswalker, but I'll have to take a look at that. But he deals 2 damage to target creature or player. That's actually pretty good. You can actually wipe a lot of the board off just by that alone, or you can end up killing your opponent with it. So I went ahead and put 2 of those in there. Alright, werewolves do have a lord. And in fact, wolves have a lord in general. This is Emberwolf. He's a 3 to cast, 2/2. He has Intimidate. What that basically means is that he can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and their creatures that share its colors. So for this one, being a gold card and being multicolor is actually a downfall for Intimidate, because that means he can be blocked by other red or green creatures. So, unfortunately, Intimidate's not so great as far as a gold card. However, he is a werewolf lord, but he's also a wolf lord. So, this one gives wolves and werewolves +1/+1. Now, the last ability is where it gets really nice. He makes it so that your non-human werewolves can't transform. So basically what that means is, if you have a regular werewolf that's a human on the board that is not transformed, when he transforms into his pure werewolf state, he can't change back into a human. That's important because that means that he stays in his bigger, more badass state with him in play. So I got 2 of those in there, giving you 2 Anthem effects and 2 chances at getting this out so that you have werewolves that don't transform back. Alright, so that's the creatures. Onto the spells, I chose Moon Mist. It is the only fog in the game, and I say fog because it's got a fog effect that actually can be used offensively instead of defensively. So what it does is it transforms all your humans. So remember, if you have Immerwolf out, you transform them, they can't transform back. So they stay in their bigger state. Then it says prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures other than werewolves and wolves. So it's a one-sided fog. So what that really means is that you've transformed all of your creatures into the bigger, badder form. Oh, I just thought about that, big bad wolf. That's funny. You transform them all into the big bad wolves. Then you attack, and no matter what happens, your guys will survive because unless you're playing another werewolf deck, which I doubt, your guys are the only ones that can deal damage. So I've got 4 of those in there. Now, this card is for another half Anthem. It's an enchantment for 2 that all your werewolf creatures get +1/+0. And more importantly is trample. So I told you that they'd get a little bit bigger. They did. You've got 2 Anthem effects in Immerwolf, and then you've got this. So now they're essentially, if you've got all 3 out for some reason, you're giving them +3/+2. Giving them trample is the next logical thing so that they can get their damage through. For certain creatures, it doesn't matter because they just deal their damage even if they were blocked. But, just making them bigger alone makes it better for them. The other part of this is that you can sacrifice it to regenerate all werewolves you control. Minus a few regular wolves in here, most of your creatures in here are werewolves. So that's, if you are in a dire state and need to regenerate them all, you have that ability. However, I did put 2 of them in here, so you can have multiples of them out at a time. Alright, removal is in the red spot. We have a play set of shocks because why wouldn't you? Shocks are just universally good. Annihilating Fire, again, I explained in a previous video. I use Annihilating Fires in a lot of my budget decks just because it helps with the... You don't have anything that can remove graveyards from the game. Most of those effects that help remove graveyards from the game, they are expensive, and for a reason. So this is my way of getting around that. So I've got 2 Annihilating Fires. Alright, now for the rares. First one, Daybreak Ranger. 3 to cast 2/2. You can tap them to deal 2 damage to a creature with flying. If you didn't notice, the one thing missing from this deck is flying. We do not have it. It is an issue. So I put him in there because he can at least help clear out a little bit. Now remember, he's also a werewolf, so he flips. When he transforms into his bigger, badder form, he fights target creature as a 4/4. I'm not as big a fan of the fight mechanic as some people are because, you can lose your creature, some fuckery can happen, you never know. But for the purposes of what we're looking at, he can kill almost anything on the board as a 4/4. So we went with Daybreak Ranger. The next one, I actually did 2 of these because he was pretty good for the deck. I liked it. It's a 3 to cast 2/2, but it's first strike. And he has the werewolf transform, or she has. Is that a he or a she? Looks like, I don't know. Can't tell you. I think it's a she. Anyway, 3 to cast 2/2 first strike, but it's the werewolf form that made me happier. When it transforms, I'll go with that. It becomes a 3/3 double striker, but this one actually acts as a partial Lord, in that it gives each werewolf you control. This ability has been turned into Menace. Menace, which is that it can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. So it makes all of your werewolves have Menace, meaning that now they're going to have Trample, now they're going to, it just makes them all have menace. And I went with 2 of those because of that. I wanted that out on the board for you guys. Alright, so the special card is Dictator of the Twin Gods. It's foil. It flashes in. It helps you with your direct damage to get creatures off the board. What a lot of people don't realize about Dictator of the Twin Gods is that it says if it's a source would deal damage to a permanent or player. It'll also include your creatures, and your creatures are going to hit pretty hard. So when your creatures hit, they deal double damage. Just keep that in mind. With trample, that's super important, because when you trample over, you deal double the damage again. So to explain that, if I attack with a 2/1 trampler and you block with a 1/1, I deal the 4 damage as trample damage. And then when I deal damage again to the player, it doubles it again. So if it's 1, when I deal the 4 damage to the creature, 3 of it spills over, and that spillover doubles again, because it says if a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, each instance of damage it does, it doubles again. Now, this rule may have changed recently. I am not sure. I will have to look it up. But if you are going to purchase this deck at the con, I will know that rule beforehand, so I can let you know if that is still true or if that has changed since I have made this, deck and sold it and made the video. So now we are red-green, truly red-green, so we're going to have obviously mountains and forests, equal number. We put the faux fetches in. If you haven't gotten my explanation on the faux fetches, fetches are expensive because they thin your deck out of land draws, making your draws better as you go through the game. These are the budget versions of them. They cost basically nothing. They're in everything. And they're not as good as fetches, but they do help with that theory. And of course, a play set of Gruul Guild packs for the red-green. Alright, so that is the $20 budget deck, Hungry Like the Wolf.